It was a stormy evening, and the rain battered the windows of Ethan's county apartment. He had been sitting on his couch, staring at his favorite TV show, but his mind was elsewhere. After months of working late nights and weekends, he finally had a break. He was looking forward to a quiet evening, but the storm outside was unsettling. Suddenly, there was a soft knock at the door. He glanced at the clock. Who would be visiting at this hour, especially in this weather? Curiosity got the better of him, and Ethan made his way to the door, hesitating for a moment before opening it. Standing in the doorway was a figure, unlike anything Ethan had ever seen before. She was drenched from head to toe, her wet clothes clinging to her body. But it wasn't her appearance that made Ethan's heart skip a beat. It was the fact that she was clearly not human. Her skin had a faint greenish hue, her eyes large and glowing faintly, and her hair, although soaked, shimmered in an otherworldly way. "Excuse me," she said, her voice soft but filled with a peculiar musical quality. "I need some assistance." Ethan stood frown-seen in the doorway. Was this some kind of prank? He rubbed his eyes, certain that he must have been seeing things, but Nosha was still there, standing awkwardly, shivering in the rain. Are you an alien?" Ethan finally managed to ask, his voice shaky. The girl nodded slowly. "I am. My name is Zara, and I come from a planet far away from here. I was on a mission, but something went wrong. My ship crash-landed on this planet, and I've been wondering for hours. This rain, it affects me more than I anticipated." Ethan blinked. He had always been a fan of sci-fi, but this was far beyond anything he had imagined experiencing. Still, he couldn't leave her out in the cold, especially if she was telling the truth. "Come in," he said, stepping aside to let her into the warmth of his apartment. Zara hesitated for a moment, then stepped inside, her wet clothes dripping on the floor. "Thank you," she said, looking around the room curiously. "You're very kind. Let me get you something to dry off," Ethan offered, rushing to grab a towel from the bathroom. He handed it to her, still unsure what to make of the situation. "So, you're really an alien. Why are you here?" Zara began to dry herself off, though it was clear that her clothes were still soaked through. "My mission was supposed to be simple: observe human behavior and report back to my people. We've been watching Earth for a long time, but we've kept our distance. This was supposed to be a peaceful mission, but my ship was damaged by a storm as I entered your planet's atmosphere. I've been stranded here ever since." Ethan felt a strange mix of awe and disbelief. An alien standing in his apartment, dripping water all over his floor. This wasn't exactly the peaceful evening he had planned, but his curiosity was piqued. "You mentioned the rain affects you," Ethan asked, glancing outside at the continuing downpour. Zara nodded, a faint shiver running through her. "Water on my planet is very different. It's lighter, less dense. Your planet's rain is much heavier, and it weakens me." Ethan frowned. "You mean you can't handle our water?" She smiled softly. "I can, but it drains my energy quickly. That's why I need your help. I don't know much about human customs, but I've observed that humans clean themselves when they get wet. I was wondering if you could help me with that." Ethan's face turned bright red. "You want me to help you? What?" Zara tilted her head, her glowing eyes full of innocence. "Is that not what humans do when they are wet? They wash, correct?" Ethan coughed nervously. "Well, yeah, but it's a bit more personal when someone else helps with that." Zara blinked, clearly not understanding the human notion of modesty. "I see. I apologize if I am imposing. I'm unfamiliar with your customs. If it's inappropriate, I will find another way." Ethan could see that she was genuinely in distress, and his awkwardness was quickly replaced by concern. Mo, it's fine. I'll help you. Let's just figure this out together, okay?" He led Zara to the bathroom, his mind racing. How exactly was he going to handle this situation? He handed her some fresh clothes, an old t-shirt and sweatpants that would be oversized on her petite frame, and gestured to the shower. "You can use this. It's pretty simple. Just turn the handle here for water. I'll wait outside if you need anything," Ethan explained, trying his best to maintain a calm demeanor. Zara inspected the shower with great interest. "Fascinating," she murmured, turning the water on and watching it fall with wide eyes. "Your technology is quite advanced for something so simple." Ethan smiled, despite the bizarre situation. "Yeah, well, it gets the job done. He stepped out of the bathroom to give Zara some privacy, though his mind continued to swirl with questions. An alien, here in his apartment, asking for help with something as mundane as washing off rainwater. It was surreal, but strangely, he felt a sense of responsibility. After a few minutes, Zara emerged from the bathroom, looking far more refreshed. The oversized t-shirt hung loosely on her, and her wet hair was now dry and shimmering even more brightly. She smiled at him, her expression full of gratitude. "Thank you," she said softly. "I feel much better now." Ethan waved it off, trying to play it cool. "No problem. So, what now? Are you going to try and contact your people?" Zara looked down, her expression turning more serious. "I'm not sure I can. My ship is badly damaged, and without it, I have no way to communicate with my planet. I may be stranded here for longer than I anticipated." Ethan felt a pang of sympathy for her. The idea of being stranded on a foreign planet, far from home, with no way to contact anyone, it was a terrifying thought. "You can stay here as long as you need," Ethan blurted out before he could stop himself. Zara looked up at him, her glowing eyes filled with surprise. "Are you sure? I don't want to impose." Ethan smiled. "It's no trouble. Besides, I'd love to learn more about your world. Maybe we can figure out a way to fix your ship together." Zara's smile returned, and for the first time since they met, Ethan saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "Thank you, Ethan. You're very kind for a human." He chuckled. "Well, not all of us are bad." The following weeks were a whirlwind of new experiences for both Ethan and Zara. Ethan had taken time off from his usual routine, partly out of concern for his new extraterrestrial guest and partly because he found himself increasingly fascinated by her world, her technology, and the mystery surrounding her arrival. Zara, on the other hand, was getting used to human customs, although with occasional awkward moments that still left Ethan flustered. Every day after work, Ethan would come home to find Zara either immersed in repairing her damaged equipment or curiously exploring his small apartment. She had an insatiable curiosity for everything Earth-related, from the simple appliances in his kitchen to the vast array of human entertainment. Ethan caught her binge-watching TV shows late into the night, her wide glowing eyes glued to the screen as she absorbed information about human culture. It was almost comical on Alien, fascinated by soap operas. One evening, as the rain poured down again, Ethan found Zara sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, carefully examining what looked like a small, intricately designed device from her ship. Her concentration was intense, and her glowing eyes seemed to change color as she adjusted various parts of the mechanism. "Any luck with that thing?" Ethan asked, plopping down on the couch. Zara looked up, smiling softly. "Not yet, but I'm getting closer. The damage is extensive, but I believe I'll be able to fix it soon. Your planet's resources, however, are limited in what I need." Ethan frowned. "What exactly do you need? Maybe I can help find it." She tilted her head thoughtfully. "It's a rare mineral that doesn't exist naturally on Earth, but I think I can synthesize it with the right materials. The problem is, I haven't located the necessary elements yet." Ethan scratched his head, feeling a little out of his depth. "I'm no scientist, but I know a guy who works at the university. Maybe he could help you figure it out." Zara's face brightened at the suggestion. "That would be helpful. If I can get the materials, I should be able to repair the communication device and send a signal to my people." Ethan felt a pang of sadness at the thought of Zara leaving. In such a short time, she had become a part of his daily life. Though their meeting was accidental and strange, her presence was now familiar, almost comforting. He didn't know how to express it, but deep down, he realized he didn't want her to leave in it just yet. The next day, Ethan contacted his old friend, Dr. Robert Willis, a physicist at the local university. Over the phone, Ethan explained that he had a theoretical project involving extraterrestrial materials and wanted to discuss it over coffee. The two met at a small cafe near the campus. "So, what's this about alien minerals?" Robert asked with a raised eyebrow, taking a sip of his coffee. Ethan hesitated, knowing how absurd it would sound if he just blurted out the truth. "It's a bit complicated. Let's say, hypothetically, I'm working with someone who's, not from Earth. She needs help finding or synthesizing a rare mineral to repair her, equipment. Robert chuckled, clearly thinking it was a joke. Right, Ethan, you're hanging out with aliens now, got it? No, seriously, Ethan said, leaning in, just hear me out. What if this were real? What would someone need to synthesize a rare, non-Earth mineral? Robert studied him for a moment, his curiosity piqued. You're really into this? All right, let's play along. What kind of mineral are we talking about? Ethan pulled out a piece of paper where Zara had drawn a detailed diagram of the mineral's molecular structure. He slid it across the table to Robert, who examined it carefully. This is interesting, Robert said slowly, his eyes narrowing. It's not like anything I've seen before. You're telling me someone gave this to you? Ethan nodded, trying to appear nonchalant. Yeah, something like that. Can you help? Robert scratched his chin. If this is legit, I'd need access to some high-tech lab equipment far more advanced than what we've got here. And even then, it would take time to figure out how to synthesize it. You're asking for a lot, man. Ethan sighed. I know, but it's important. I wouldn't be asking if it wasn't. Robert looked at him skeptically, but finally relented. All right, I'll see what I can do, but if this turns out to be some elaborate prank, you owe me big time. Deal, Ethan said with a grin, relieved that he had at least made some progress. That evening, Ethan returned home to tell Zara the good news. She was seated at the kitchen table, fiddling with another one of her devices, her glowing eyes brightening when she saw him enter. How did it go? She asked eagerly. Better than I expected, Ethan replied. My friend Robert thinks it can help, but it's going to take some time. He'll need access to advanced equipment to synthesize the mineral. Zara's expression softened. Thank you, Ethan. I appreciate everything you're doing for me. You've been incredibly kind, more than I could have asked for. Ethan shrugged, feeling a bit awkward under her gaze. Well, you're stuck here, and I'm not the kind of person to leave someone stranded, especially not someone as unique as you. Zara tilted her head, her glowing eyes studying him with curiosity. Unique? I've observed many humans, and you, Ethan, are the most unique among them. Ethan chuckled nervously. Yeah, well, I guess that's one way to put it. As the days passed, Ethan and Zara spent more time together, not just working on fixing her ship but also learning about each other. Zara would tell him stories of her home planet, a world filled with advanced technology and peaceful societies. Ethan, in turn, would share stories of his life, his dreams, and his experiences on Earth. There was an undeniable connection growing between them, something that went beyond their initial meeting. They came from two different worlds literally, but in each other, they found an unexpected bond. Ethan had never felt this way about anyone before, and he wasn't sure if it was because Zara was an alien or simply because she was different in all the best ways. One evening, after another long day of working on Zara's equipment, they sat on the balcony of Ethan's apartment, watching the stars. The night was calm, and the rain had finally stopped, leaving the air cool and crisp. I've been thinking, Zara said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. The days blurred into weeks, and soon, the time came when Zara's device was nearly repaired. The mineral synthesis had been a success thanks to Robert's help, and now Zara only had a few final adjustments to make. Ethan could feel a bittersweet tension building inside him. He knew this meant Zara would soon be able to call her people and return to her home planet. A part of him was happy for her, but another part dreaded the day she would leave. One evening, Zara worked late into the night, her hands deftly manipulating the strange alien technology. Ethan sat nearby, pretending to watch TV, but his mind was racing. He couldn't stop thinking about what would happen next. Should he tell her how he felt? Could he even ask her to stay? The thoughts weighed heavily on him, but he pushed them aside, trying to focus on the moment. Just as Ethan was about to head to bed, Zara looked up from her work, her face glowing not just from the faint luminescence of her alien skin but with excitement. I did it, she said softly, her voice filled with awe. It's fixed. Ethan's heart sank and soared at the same time. He forced a smile. That's amazing, Zara. So, what happens now? Zara looked at the device in her hands, then back at Ethan. Now I can send a signal to my people. They'll come for me. I'll be able to go home. Ethan nodded, trying to hide the emotion bubbling up inside him. That's great. I'm happy for you. For a moment, they just stared at each other, the weight of unspoken words hanging between them. Zara's expression softened as she placed the device on the table and stood up, walking over to where Ethan sat. Her glowing eyes searched his face, as if trying to understand the conflict within him. "You don't seem happy," she said gently. Ethan let out a shaky breath, unable to hold it in any longer. "It's not that I'm not happy for you, Zara. It's just, I've gotten used to having you here. You're my friend. More than that, actually, I just don't know what I'm going to do when you're gone." Zara's gaze softened even more, and she knelt down in front of him, her hands resting on his knees. "Ethan, I feel the same way. You've become more than just a companion to me. You've shown me kindness, patience, and warmth. These are things I didn't expect to find on this planet. I didn't expect to find you." Ethan swallowed hard, his heart pounding in his chest. "Then stay," he blurted out before he could stop himself. "Stay here with me. You don't have to go." Zara's expression faltered, a flicker of sadness crossing her face. "Ethan, I wish it were that simple. My people, they need me. I can't abandon my mission, and even if I wanted to, Earth isn't my home. I wouldn't belong here." Ethan lowered his eyes, the weight of reality crashing down on him. He knew she was right, but that didn't make it any easier. "I know," he whispered. I don't want to lose you." Zara reached out and cupped his face gently, her touch warm and comforting. "You won't lose me, Ethan. I'll always remember you. And who knows, maybe one day our paths will cross again." Ethan smiled sadly, though he could feel tears threatening to spill. "Yeah, maybe." The next morning, Zara activated her repaired communication device, sending a signal to her people. They responded almost immediately, confirming that they would arrive within a day to retrieve her. The knowledge that their time together was coming to an end weighed heavily on both of them. As the hours passed, Ethan and Zara spent their last moments together, talking, laughing, and sharing memories. They reminisced about the strange, wonderful time they had spent together, each moment feeling more precious as the minutes ticked by. Neither of them spoke of the impending goodbye, choosing instead to live in the present, soaking up every second they had left. Finally, as dusk fell, the sound of a low hum filled the air. Ethan looked up to see a faint glow in the sky, growing brighter as it approached. Zara stood beside him, her eyes fixed on the sky, her expression unreadable. "They're here," she said quietly. Ethan nodded, his throat tight. "Yeah, I guess this is it." Zara turned to him, her eyes filled with emotion. "Ethan, I want you to know that you've made this experience unforgettable for me. You've shown me the best of humanity, and for that, I'll always be grateful." Ethan smiled, though it was bittersweet. "You've changed my life, Zara. I'll never forget you." For a long moment, they stood there, staring at each other, neither of them wanting to say the final goodbye. Then, without thinking, Ethan stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her, pulling her into a tight embrace. Zara hesitated for a split second, then hugged him back, her grip firm but tender. "Goodbye, Ethan," she whispered, her voice filled with a mixture of sadness and warmth. "Goodbye, Zara," Ethan replied, his voice thick with emotion. As the glowing light grew brighter, a beam of light descended from the ship above, enveloping Zara in its soft glow. She gave Ethan one last, lingering look before the beam lifted her off the ground. Ethan watched in silence as the light carried her up, his heart heavy but full of gratitude for the time they had shared. Within moments, the ship disappeared into the sky, leaving Ethan standing alone in the quiet of the night. The storm had passed, the sky now clear and dotted with stars. Ethan stared up at the vast expanse above him, feeling both a profound sense of loss and a strange sense of peace. Zara was gone, but the impact she had on his life would remain forever. The connection, though brief, had been deep and transformative, and as Ethan stood there, gazing at the stars, he realized that maybe, just maybe, their paths would cross again one day. For now, though, he would carry her memory with him, a reminder that even in the most unexpected of moments, extraordinary things can happen, and that sometimes the connections we form, even across galaxies, are what truly make life meaningful. With a final sigh, Ethan turned and walked back into his apartment. The future was uncertain, but he knew one thing for sure: his life would never be the same again.